Okay, hello everyone. This is a video about how to use lsdtopotools, and I'm going to be running an analysis on Google Colab. This is maybe the first video that you might watch. The thing that I'm going to do today is just to download a little bit of data using the opentopography interface. If you go to lsdtt notebooks, the GitHub page, so the address is up here, you can find lots of different topotools notebooks. So I'm going to start a new notebook for this one, but it's based on notebooks that are available within this series of notebooks. If you click on any of these notebooks, so I'm going to go into basic examples. You can click on something like download topographic data and looking at it. This lesson is pretty much going to go like that. If you click on the Open in Colab button, it will take you to Google Colab. So I have, how do I get rid of this thing? Okay, I have started a notebook over here. If you want to work lsdtopotools in Google Colab, you always need to do a few steps to get started, and that will have to happen in any notebook you start. So you might, if you start a new window here, you're going to need to do these 3 steps again. So the first step is to install something called lsdtopotools, and that is a pip install. So you just copy this over. In almost all of the notebooks that I have available on the lsdtopotools notebooks, the sort of first thing you do is this: install the lsdtopotools. The second thing you do, so that actually, when I did this, that took about 7 seconds. Then you do this command, which installs something called conda colab, which basically installs the Anaconda installers onto this instance of Google Colab. And you need that to install lsdtopotools. This thing doesn't take very long either, much less than a minute. It will restart the window, so you'll get a little message at the bottom saying your session crashed. The session didn't actually crash. That's just conda colab restarting the kernel. And then you need to start lsdtopotools with this command. So again, these are in pretty much all of the notebooks. You copy these over to your new notebook. Once that is done, you should have lsdtopotools installed. You can check to see if it's installed and look at the version number. So I'm going to copy a command here. So I've just copied this command. lsdtt basic metrics is one of the lsdtopotools tools. And the -V is to tell you what the version is. So let's just Control Enter and execute that. And what you see here is that this is version 0.9. So as of September 2023, that's the latest version. So everything is working fine. Now, the next thing we need to do, I'm going to download data from opentopography. Okay, how do you download data? Well, you need an API key from opentopography. So what you would do, you would go into opentopography here, and then you click on My OpenTopo. You need to sign in. So this is me signed in. You'll need to sign in yourself, and then you would click on Get an API key. When you click on Get an API key, it will show you a string of letters and numbers. That's your API key. You need to keep that key secret. But how do you get it into Colab? Well, so if you right-click somewhere, you can make a new text file like this. This is a blank document. You can call it My API key. Oops, that was all cap, but we'll just keep it that way. Yeah, that's fine. Then open this document. Yeah, it's a blank document, and then you paste in those letters and numbers. So in this case, I don't have the thing copied, but it'll be a bunch of, it'll look something like this. It'll be a bunch of letters and numbers, and then you need to save those letters and numbers. Yeah. Then you take that file. So I've got the file over here. Okay, so actually, that's my real API key here. So I've got this file. I'm going to go back to the Colab thing. If I reduce the size of this, if you see in the left-hand column here, there's a little file button. So you just pull that file over here. Yep. Now, this will not live in Google Colab. It's only a local file. So you'll need to drag and drop your real opentopography API key every time you start a new session. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we will download some data. So if I go back to my existing workbook, getting the data, so you don't really need to change any of this bit. This is a bunch of stuff from lsdtopotools that allows you to download some data. So I'm just going to copy that whole thing in here, right? And the only thing you really need to change is the lat and long coordinates. So where are we going to get the lat and long coordinates? Well, I use Google Maps. So if I go to Google Maps, let's pick a place that's fun. I don't know. Let's go somewhere north of Montpellier in France, and I'm gonna right click and look, there's a lat and long location. So that's gonna be my lower left corner. So I will put that in as my lower left corner. So I just copied and pasted that. Now I need my upper right corner. So I'm going to right click here, copy it to the clipboard, and paste it there. Okay, so I've got the size of my place that I'm going to download. In this, I've got a dataset prefix and a source name. The source name is the DEM you want to download. There's a few options from opentopography. You can get NASA DEM, you can get the Copernicus 30 DEM, you can get the ALOS World 3D DEM. I think the COP 30 is probably the best one. ALOS World 3D is quite good as well. NASA DEM is based on SRTM data, which was collected in the year 2000. So it's an older landscape. COP 30 is sort of the most up-to-date landscape. So I'm using COP 30. I'm just going to call this Diablo. Well, actually, we can change this. So let's change this to France. Okay, that was all caps. I didn't mean to do that, but anyway, I'm going to keep it like that. Okay, so then I hit Control-Enter to execute this. So if you have pasted in the correct opentopography API key and it's sitting here in your file network, this will download everything. What it does, it downloads a file, it will then unzip the file and it will convert it to the correct file format. So actually if I replace or resample this or refresh the folder, you see that it's downloaded this TIFF. It actually also downloaded a zip file, which it then deleted. So it's got a TIFF, and then it's converted this. It's converted the TIFF to UTM coordinates, and then it's converted to a different file format called the bill file format. It's an NV bill file, which is what lsdtopotools takes. So let's just look at this data. I'm going to, I need to import something from lsdtopotools called map wrappers. So that gets imported. And I'm going to use a little driver here to make a hillshade. You don't need to memorize any of these commands. What you do is you just copy over and paste from other notebooks that I've written that have the commands you want in them. Later, when you become a more expert user, you can start to use this to control what analyses you want. So we'll do that. And so remember, in this bit of the code, I called a dataset prefix, I called the source name. These bits are in the file names here, so it knows what file names to write. I can refresh this. Actually, it's just refreshed anyway. And now I have something with an underscored HS. That's a Hillshade file now. Okay, let's go to the next step. So I'm going to copy this next bit. This calls the simple Hillshade function from LSD map wrappers. The first bit is to say I want to plot this plot right here. Okay, so I will control execute this. And there we go. That is the hillshade of the area that I wanted. Is there anything else I want to do? Yes, I can show you how to save this figure. So what I do, I use a slightly different version of the previous command. The really only difference is instead of save fig false, I've changed this to save fig true. So that will now save the figure. You can control the DPI of this. The size format controls the width of the page. There aren't too many options there. I would just keep it on geomorphology, and you can control the size of the figure with the DPI. And then we can just see that image in the notebook. So here we go. This will be the same image as before, but bigger. And you also have a PNG file. So here we go. That's a bit bigger version of the same image. If I refresh this, you can see, let's expand this out a bit. Nope, it's not updated. Let me update again. Okay, usually that PNG image is going to be here. This is probably just thinking a bit. Oh, there it is. I'm silly, I missed it. Here it is right here. So this is the PNG image. You can download that and you can put it in your fancy talks. So hopefully that was a useful video for you to figure out how to get your opentopography API key into a Google Colab notebook and run the most basic analysis, which is just running a hillshade on your DEM. Okay, thanks.